Let's go to one of the, I suppose, the nicest stories about what's happened, Richelle, in the town of Ararat. And we've had a few texts actually about what's happened in Ararat from residents there talking about the paper disappearing. For a while there, Jack Ward was the only journo in town, and that's because he ran a podcast, but more has happened there. Jack Ward can join us now. Jack, welcome to the program.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
What's it like being the only journo in town? You must get the scoop on all the stories, or do people just avoid you like the plague?
No, well, I was the only journo here in Ararat for 2 weeks whilst we didn't have a newspaper, and it was an interesting experience. I've been asked about it quite a lot recently, and if there was any added pressure or things like that. And for me, there wasn't. I mean, I've been covering news here in Ararat for 3 years now, so it was just continuing life as normal. But I did enjoy an influx of story suggestions that were coming through to me, which made my life of chasing stories a little bit easier. But no, it definitely was a very interesting experience.
And what has happened since then? Because I mentioned there was a paper in Ararat. It's 160 years old, but it shut down. You were left for 2 weeks. And what's happened since then?
Yeah, it's been an interesting change in our news landscape. The Ararat Advertiser did close, or suspend, I should say, printing. They're doing minimal online content from an editor outside of our region. And yeah, that happened a month or so ago now, and then I was by my own, and then I got a message from Craig Wilson, and he publishes the Pyrenees Advocate out of Beaufort and Avoca, and he told me that he was going to start a new paper in Ararat, which was a bit of a shock to me. I was not expecting that at all, and he offered me a job, and I met with Craig, and since then I think we've had 3 editions so far of the Ararat Advocate, and the community has really rallied behind it. Craig's had to increase the amount of papers being printed each week because they've been selling out. The community's really got behind it, and so have the businesses with advertisements. It's been really great to see the support from locals.
And Jack, there's always a bit of a stereotype that somebody starts out in a regional area so that they can cut their teeth and then they can move to the big smoke. I mean, is it something that you want to stay and work and that you're passionate about working in regional news?
So, yeah, I think regional news is so important for young people wanting to get into the industry. I mean, that's where the majority, I would say, of journalists start, is out in regional newspapers and learning the craft under the guidance of editors out in regional areas like Ararat. And so I think it's incredibly important. And that's aside from the importance for the community as well. For the community, it's so important to have that local news. But for those in the industry, I think it's also incredibly important. I mean, it has been a bit of a worry for me. I'm watching all these papers close down, and that was before I got a message from Craig thinking, there's going to be no papers left by the time this is over. There's just one after another closing, and we're even seeing it in the metropolitan areas now.
And we're talking to you about the state of Ararat Media. Jack, you've got the podcast, you're working for the brand new paper that's come whilst the old paper is in hiatus. But that's not all. You're still at school.
I am still at school. It's a bit of a juggle at the moment, but that's okay. And the podcast has been moved to fortnightly at the moment. I usually do it weekly, but since my new job at the paper's risen up, I have, settled a bit with the podcast and have slowed it down a little bit and only doing an episode every fortnight. But it's an interesting juggle, but it's a good juggle, and I love telling and sharing local stories, and really passionate about journalism. So it's an honour to be able to share the community stories.
Well, people are loving the work that you do. A text here saying, I'm loving the newly launched Ararat paper, launched during COVID lockdown too. So well done. Jack, thanks so much for joining us on the Conversation Hour.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Jack Ward there.